All right, sorry about that. Liz, I have a question. How do you say your last name? I don't want to butcher it.
I can't hear her.
We can't hear you for some reason.
I was muted.
Okay, okay. All right.
Yeah. Fragger.
Freiger?
Like, yeah, like
Okay,
tiger.
perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. So I am one of the student navigators, and we have Myra with me here. She's also an honors navigator advocate actually right now, and we'll be your moderators for today. So we'll get started with Liz Vargier. And yeah, I'm gonna share my screen beforehand. Can you guys see my screen? Okay. All right. So to give you a brief, kind of like a gist of what Liz is going to talk about, she's going to talk about Apple and their business from the inside. And it's going to be all about a deep dive into Apple's financial and business model, and then as well as a look into how their employee treatment works, and then how it works from the inside out. So we're just going to share, and yeah.
My goal was to do a deep dive into Apple's financials and business model, as well as their employee treatment and how it works from the inside, and the topics that I will discuss on the next slide. I hoped to look at their history, products,
I don't think the sound is working for any of us.
Hi, Hyatt. People are having trouble hearing, right? Is that what's happening?
Yeah.
Okay, if you unshare,
Mhm.
and then
I just double checked on my presentation too, like just to make sure that it wasn't on my end when I was recording, and there is sound.
hey, what's
So
up?
Yeah, because I can hear it too. Okay, so it's not your presentation. It's probably something from my
Okay.
end. Let me see, maybe it's just a general. Gotta wait.
It started out at the beginning, you could hear the very beginning.
yeah, but it was
Oh,
only
his
for like
hand.
a slide. Yeah.
Oh my God, I am so sorry. I apologize. Okay, let me.
The release of the Macintosh. So in 1984, Apple released the Macintosh. It was intended to be a low-cost computer for the everyday user. This caused disassembly eventually of the Apple division compared to the Macintosh division. So the Macintosh 128K ran system software later renamed Mac OS, which is important because that is still the title of the Mac software used today. The differentiating the terms Mac and Apple at the time seems insignificant because they are used interchangeably. If you say you have an Apple computer, people know you have a Mac of some sort. But at the time, there were two divisions within the company. There was Apple computers, which were Apple One, Apple Two, eventually computers like Lisa, and then there were Macintosh computers, which were essentially competing with each other within the company because money was either going to one or the other. This was key in Apple's growth as a company as well. With the growth of the company comes internal issues, internal leadership problems. This caused Jobs to leave in 1985. He started Next Software. And because of the work that he had done in the company, Apple did well into the 80s, and their highest profits hit at 1990. They were essentially relying on Jobs' old actions within the company to keep them afloat and keep them successful. And it's quoted that Apple's market share suffered slowly after its peak in 1990, and by 1996, experts believed the company to be doomed. It was not until 1997, when Apple was desperately in need of an operating system, that it bought out Next Software. So again, this caused Jobs to come back to Apple. He was the interim CEO and became the official CEO in 2000. Prior to 2007, actually, Apple Inc. was Apple Computers when they started the company, and then when they were only releasing computers with one or two products here or there that weren't computers, they were named Apple Computers, shortened to Apple, but the long name was Apple Computers. In 2007, with the release of the iPhone and a handful of other products, Jobs changed the company name to Apple Inc. So the graph pictured here is Apple's market value ascension, essentially. In 2011, with Steve Jobs' death, Tim Cook took over as CEO, and Apple was the first company valued at $1 trillion in 2018, and then 2 years later doubled that figure at $2 trillion. They were competing with companies like Amazon, Microsoft, Google, and then 16 months later hit $3 trillion in 2022. So the next thing I looked at were types of products, both historically and what they sell now. So there has obviously been a slight evolution of the products that Apple sells. Apple II was released in 1977, like I said, followed by devices like the II Plus, 3, Lisa. The Apple III and Lisa were not successful. Lisa attempted to sell for $10,000 in the 80s, which people would barely even pay now. The Macintosh release in 1984 was significant, and from 1985 to 1995, there were roughly 12 new devices all varying from Macintosh to Apple. The Apple IIGS was the last Apple device released in 1986 and discontinued in 1992. This ended the Apple division with the focus shifting to solely Macintosh devices. In 1999, the release of the iBook was Jobs' attempt at one of the laptops that would essentially mirror what laptops would become in the future. The iPod release in 2001 was significant, the first small portable device from Apple that was more successful than previous devices. The turn of the new century meant lots of computers that you look at looking more like what they do now. In 2007, the release of the iPhone, iMac, Apple TV, and iPod Touch were all significant. The iPhone release was what really set in motion phones today, Apple's success, and as you can see on the graph on the previous slide, that was when their market value started shooting up. In 2008, the MacBook Air was released. 2010 was the iPad. 2012 MacBook Pro, and 2014 the Apple Watch was released. Here's a fun timeline of all the products. So as you can see, the second row, the iBook is going to be the first device that looks a tiny bit more like the computers that we have now, followed by all the MacBook releases. The top row are going to be any desktop computers. The third is anything that is labeled more as an accessory. And then as you get down are devices added with the popularity of Apple. The next category that I'm going to be talking about are Apple's threats and challenges. The biggest competitor and earliest competitor that they faced will and always will be, it was and always will be, other tech companies competing for the same consumers. They especially also, Apple's currently dealing with their App Store algorithm controversy. They receive nonstop press and they have to deal with new releases in the product lifecycle. In the 1980s, both Microsoft and Apple were competing for graphical user interface. Microsoft was creating Windows and Apple was refining Macintosh. In 1992, Macs offered an excellent but limited library of software on expensive computers. Meanwhile, Microsoft was selling Windows 3.0 on cheap commodity computers, like you can see on your screen. Apple put too much focus and money into the IBM and Motorola PowerPC microprocessor instead of the Intel processor at the time, which was used in most computers for at least a decade or two following Apple's switch to using that. This caused declining success in the company for Apple and therefore brought Jobs back as interim CEO in the 80s and 90s. With Jobs coming back, new campaigns went out, like the one on the screen, Think Different, with Fleetwood Mac. Ironically, probably not ironically, Apple's very intentional about everything they do. But there was a deal made with Microsoft. So Microsoft essentially saved Apple. This announcement at the Macworld Expo with Bill Gates. They made a deal to make nice, and it essentially led to $150 million investments into Apple. Apple did switch to the Intel processor, like I said, and they used it until 2020 when they released their own chip, their own processor. Here is a slide roughly showing the market capitalization prior to 2014. So with the pandemic causing issues with supply chains in 2020. Microsoft beat Apple, which you can't see on the graph, but Microsoft beat Apple in market cap when they were at 2.49 trillion and Apple was at 2.46 trillion. However, at the end of 2022, 3 months after CNBC reported Microsoft was ahead of its competitor, Apple did in fact reach their monumentous 3 trillion. Another threat and challenge currently is the Elon Musk, Twitter, and Apple war. So in 2021, Epic Games, which started Fortnite versus Apple, Epic Games versus Apple court case was about the controversy over the 30% commission from the App Store in Apple that they were thinking causes an illegal monopoly over how developers can process payment from mobile games. So there are internal payment systems that cause developers to up their prices and put more money towards Apple through that commission and through that payment system. Epic Games' goal in the whole case was to eliminate that commission, which would then cause developers to not have to use the payment system and prices would be lowered. So recently in the news, Elon Musk has bought Twitter and he is upset both about the commission and about Twitter being under review by Apple for their guidelines. With any tech company, there will always be issues with new devices. The release of the iPhone 14 caused, there were bugs with iOS 16 release. They had to release iOS 16.2 with those bugs to remedy those bugs. On their website, regarding their life cycle of devices, Apple states multiple generations of Apple products can benefit from updates that protect your platform from security vulnerability and offer enhanced productivity features. So Apple's opportunities for growth. I only focused on one opportunity because it hits very close to home for anybody that is in San Diego. They recently purchased the Rancho Bernardo Vista Corporate Center, which consists of about 5 tech companies. They bought it for $445 million, and it is their first commercial purchase in San Diego County. They have a goal of increasing their employees to 5,000 in the area by 2026. I don't know if that's the whole area or just at this specific location. This will help the jobs and housing market in Rancho Bernardo specifically, and definitely add jobs in an increasing tech world. So this is roughly a look at the area that they bought. Again, like I said, there's a handful of tech companies that they bought the old buildings for. Intel was over there, Northrop Grumman, and a handful of others. The next category I looked at were sustainability measures. A growth in technology is always going to be a hopeful growth in sustainability. So Apple has made small changes. They no longer have plastic wrap on their iPhone boxes. I believe it might be on other devices as well, but I only know about the iPhone boxes. They have carbon reduction in their M1 chip. They have 100% recyclable aluminum enclosure in their iPad, and there is no mercury, PVC, beryllium, or BFRs in their Apple Watch. Their iPhone has 100% recycled gold camera wires, 100% recycled rare earth elements in their magnets, and they focus on disassembling the product into recyclable parts. They are down 75% in single-use plastic packaging since 2015. So the slide above talks about their carbon neutral goals. By 2020, their goal was to be carbon neutral in their operations, which they successfully did. And their goal by 2030 is to have carbon neutral products. They release an environmental progress report every year based on the previous fiscal year, and their 218-page report for the 2021 fiscal year states that their revenue was up 33%, but that they are still taking steps to be sustainable And one example was that over 200 of their suppliers are using 100% renewable energy. Here is a graph roughly looking at their carbon emission goals prior to 2021. This was released in 2020. They also focus on the high value of trade-ins. They recycle their the metals in these devices, and they recently stopped giving out chargers in their watch and iPhone boxes. This resulted in smaller packaging, and there was a statement that said Apple actively defends this decision of theirs, stating that this very removal of chargers allows the recycling of over 861,000 metric tons of copper, tin, and zinc. The smaller packaging, seeing a 70% decrease, also means there's less overall wastage in the process. They were met with a lot of backlash, saying that it was a financial decision to remove the chargers, that it was for their own benefit, but it was a sustainability practice as well. And the last thing, a quick look at Apple's financials. So I created a graph with their numbers from their financial statements released on September 24th of 2022, as well as the comparison from their 2021 numbers. Their total revenue was up significantly from 2021 at 394 million compared to 356 million. Their gross profit was up from 152 to 170. Their total assets were only up by a million, obviously seemingly not significant, but it's a lot of money that I forget about. Total liabilities were up as well from 287 to 302. Net income was up 5 million from 94 to 99. So I chose to do my report on Apple because my husband is an engineer for them. He is currently a software engineer in test. So he tests products. He helps write codes for products like the Apple TV software. And because of that, we have just seen Apple's internal practices. So we've seen their employee treatment. We have seen that they are one of the best companies to work for, bottom line, that they allow for the jobs where if you want to work 80 hours a week, you can. If you want to do what he does and work about 40, 45 hours a week, you can do that. They have smaller incentives that are really impactful to families. One being seemingly small, but if you work at a corporate building that does not have a gym, they reimburse you for a gym membership per year. They prioritize things that are scientifically proven to make their employees more effective and cause just better lives overall. They have that. They have moving incentives for if you're moving to be with their company, things like that. So just looking at this company through my project, I enjoyed learning the history. I enjoyed looking at their sustainability, and I hope you did too. Thank you for watching.
Hi, my name is Shane Sakata, and this is my presentation.
All right.
I have a couple of questions.
All right, Dolores, you can go.
Is that okay?
Go for it.
So one question is, I did not know about this center in Rancho Bernardo. And that sounds very exciting, especially, as a faculty leader that's always looking for jobs for our students. And so I was just curious, do you know what types of jobs, have they announced much about that yet? Or what type of work and jobs are going to be available there?
Yeah, so the Rancho Bernardo location is actually where my husband works currently. They're basically shifting from their Cupertino home base, Apple Park, all that. They're hoping to make San Diego a software base. So they want a lot more hardware to be happening up at Cupertino because it just makes sense to do that up there and then remotely work on all the software down here. So there are locations in La Jolla, Mira Mesa, and then the Rancho Bernardo one is going to be the biggest, obviously because they own the land. They're currently in, they only rent out one building in Rancho Bernardo, but then increasing to those 5 buildings, it's going to be software engineering, lots of test, admin, obviously that comes with kind of the territory. Something else, they were kind of, I don't know much about like what each location focuses on, but I know this is random. I know the La Jolla location does the TV software. So they focus on Apple TV specifically, and have a really big building because of that. For some reason, they get priority in this area.
Oh, that's great. Was there anything interesting or surprising about that most interesting thing you found while doing your research, or surprising? Since your husband worked there, you probably knew a little bit about the company obviously already, but I was just wondering if there's anything that was kind of stuck out to you.
I knew very little about like the history of the company, their financials. I don't do research on that before like buying a phone, because I feel like everybody uses them now. You just like, oh yeah, it's a good phone, like laptops work, cool. Yeah, so learning like that Steve Jobs himself left, learning that there was a third co-founder that thought the company wasn't going to be successful. Things like that were interesting. And then probably reading and researching about their sustainability. I think that was one of the things that I had no idea about. Like the last time I bought a phone, I was given a charger. It was wrapped in plastic. It had all those little arrows that you have to like follow the unwrapping, and it's kind of fun. But the fact that they got rid of it, the fact that that was like an actual sustainability incentive, and that that wasn't just cutting cost or not wanting to make any chargers and give those out anymore, was super interesting. I think that's something that gets overlooked with tech companies unless you're really into it, that can be kind of on the back burner of things that you care about researching, maybe.
Great, thank you, nice job.
All right, thank you, Liz. We actually have one more question for you. So Ainsley asked, did they go, was there any financial struggle with going carbon neutral with Apple or any?
I actually don't know. I know that so it was their, I don't know if I explained this well enough. So it was their corporate buildings and stuff that use that are carbon neutral. So all their operations in their corporate buildings, so Apple Park, all the buildings in San Diego, those are all carbon neutral now. And then they're hoping to do by 2030 that all the products themselves are carbon neutral. I think their website, that screenshot that I included, said that. I don't know financially. I know that, like I said, some of their incentives that might have helped them go carbon neutral would save them money naturally, because if you're like releasing a product that naturally wouldn't be carbon neutral, and then you release one that is, maybe you'll get more investors, like things like that. I didn't think to look into that, but if an investor, or maybe a company that's wanting to invest or use your products, is really, really big on carbon neutrality or sustainability measures, that they'd be a lot more likely to invest in you if you take steps like that.
All right, thank you so much for answering that. And I actually have a personal question, which is, did you come across any struggles or difficulties doing research, or was it like a smooth research, would you say?
It was really smooth. I really enjoyed it. I'm happy that it worked out and I got to do a company that is so impactful in so many people's lives. Like, even if you don't, maybe if you don't own an Apple product yourself, you obviously know people that do, or it impacts how you do school, or it impacts your work environment, things like that you might not even see. Yeah, so it was a really smooth process. There's so much information. They are really minimal company, so it's easy to find their financials, it's easy to find their sustainability measures, it's easy to look at their products and like what they've been struggling with. And so many people are interested in them as a company that there was a lot of commentary and a lot of research done outside of like internal for the company.
All right, thank you so much for answering that. Does anyone have any questions, concerns, comments regarding Liz's presentation? No? All right. Thank you so much for presenting, Liz. I know we had a little bit of a computer issue, but I hope we don't have to go through that in the next video. But yeah, thank you again for presenting.
Hi, so
Yes.
for this next one, I'm gonna let you try again.
Okay.
But so when you hit share screen,
All right.
it should have given you in the bottom left the ability to choose whether you shared your sound or not. So I was wondering if that was the issue.
Hi, my name is Shane
Okay,
Sakata,
you can
and
hear
this
it.
is my
You can hear it, right? So
Yeah.
it starts out pretty good until you get into a second slide. Let me see if you can hear it here.
219
Yeah.
million,
Good.
which was a 50.
Okay, so we'll just give it a shot. Okay.
All right.
All right. So,
I'm gonna leave this breakout room, but message me if you need me, okay?
all right. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
All right. We're gonna go back. All right. So. Let's see.
Hi, my name is Shane Sakata.
Do you want to introduce him? Do you want to introduce him? Or I could. It's a video, so you don't have to. All right. There we go.
Hi, my name is Shane Sakata, and this is my presentation.
Because it's unmuted.
With the
Oh
best
my God.
possible prices
Can
on
you hear
quality
it?
brand name products.
Okay. Great.
They're a
Cool.
part of the
There
retail
we go.
industry, and some of their competitors are Sam's Club and Walmart. Costco sells a wide variety of products, such as groceries, electronics, hardware, clothing, in addition to insurance, car repair, installations, and a multitude of other goods and services. So some basic information about Costco. It was founded in 1976 by James Senegal and Jeffrey Brotman. It was founded and the headquarters is in Issaquah, Washington, and the current CEO is Craig Jelinek. Currently, there are about 288,000 team members globally and 195,000 in the US. There are 834 warehouses worldwide in 13 different countries. 572 of the locations are in the US. Costco's core value is to continually provide our members with quality goods and services at the lowest possible price. So this is just a few of the CSR efforts that Costco has done. In the past 21 years, they've raised over 65 million through the Costco Scholarship Fund. This fund is for underrepresented minorities in the Washington area. And in 2021 alone, they donated over 5.8 million in scholarships. They've also committed 25 million to the Black Economic Development Fund, which is to increase opportunities for Black-led or owned financial institutions, developers, and businesses. They've also invested 1 million in the Fearless Fund, which is to address the disparities that exist in venture capital funds for business led by women of color. So just based on a few of their donations, it's evident that Costco is heavily committed to being an active member in the community for all races, genders, and class. So this is the revenue that they've had in the 52-week fiscal year, which totaled 192 billion. It was an increase of 18% from the previous year. Looking at the graphs for revenue in the last 3 years, Costco has consistently increased in revenue, even during the COVID pandemic. Despite restrictions causing challenges in transportation, labor shortages, and inflation. Costco dominated the retail industry, and this was largely due to their bulk cost-saving products. Costco's expenses for the quarter, which ended in August 2022, was 69 billion, which was a 15.22% increase. Over the 12 months, their expenses was 219 billion, which was a 15.8% increase from the previous year. Their profit for the quarter was 8.5 billion, which was a 7.5% increase. And over the 12 months, they made a profit of 27 billion, which was a 9.2% increase from the previous year. So while the expenses have significantly increased, they're still able to increase in profit every year. What makes Costco such a high competitor is their membership model, private label, their gas station, and their e-commerce store. 75% of their profit comes from their membership system. Their private label, Kirkland Signature, is the US's biggest consumer packaged good brand measured by sales. The Kirkland Signature brand produces very high quality items at a lower price than the other items that they sell at Costco. And they also sell a wide variety of items. So it's not just food, drinks, and clothing, but they also sell medications and other items as well. Their gas station is also for members only, and it's significantly lower prices than other gas stations. They also have an e-commerce store that allows shoppers to shop online, and they deliver it to their desired location. So digging deeper into their membership model, they were one of the first companies to implement this type of model. They have 3 types of memberships, which are the Gold Star, Business, and Executive memberships. The Gold Star and Business memberships are $60. A Gold Star is more for families who aren't affiliated with business and they just want to shop at Costco. The Business membership is more for business owners that want to buy for resale use and for their own business. The Executive membership is $120, and this allows members to have more savings on Costco services such as automobiles, insurance, and home installation. And they also receive a 2% annual reward on qualified Costco purchases and benefits on travel products. Costco has an effective social media marketing strategy using tools like Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube to connect to their customers. Costco's social media is very active, especially on Instagram. They post at least once a day, and they also have 1.1 million followers. The posts focus on promoting items in their store, mentioning discounts and holiday items. As you can see, the picture of the right is an example of one of their posts. They also post daily on their Instagram story, posting a picture of a product and placing a link that takes the viewer straight to their online store. This is a very smart marketing strategy, enticing viewers with easily accessible links that take them straight to the product they're promoting. Overall, I think their marketing team does a great job of promoting products at their store. Costco's viewed very highly by their own employees as mostly because they get paid very well and they also receive great benefits. They're ranked in the top 100 places to work every year by Glassdoor. They were also ranked 4th in California on Forbes America's Best Employers by state. And they were rated a 4-star employer review on Glassdoor with a 78% recommendation to a friend, 85% CEO approval, and a 70% positive business outlook. So some legal positions they're in, they're highly committed to protecting human rights. They have their own supplier code of conduct. They're a part of the United Nations and the International Labor Organization, and they're also a part of the Responsible Business Alliance, as well as WRAP, which is the Worldwide Responsible Accredited Production. They've also taken many steps in order to bring awareness and improvement to human trafficking. They work with Truckers Against Trafficking to educate their drivers against human trafficking. And they've also established trainings, programs, and events to educate their suppliers in order to eradicate any form of forced labor, child labor, or human trafficking. So to conclude this presentation, I believe that Costco has become such a powerhouse in the retail industry because of their ability to maintain and gain customers. And they're able to do that by having discounted prices. Their additional services like their car repair are also major benefits. And I think the biggest benefit that Costco has is their low gasoline prices, especially during this time when gasoline prices are inflated. Costco has been able to provide their members with the lowest gas prices. Their high retention rate is also a huge reason for their success. Their ability to maintain employees throughout the company improves productivity as it lessens the time to train new employees and get them up to speed. They also have good morale when retention rate is high because they spend more time, which enables them to have a greater connection in their team. And they also are able to retain their best employees, which are crucial for having a successful plan and problem solving throughout the company. And I believe that they're going to be able to continue their success because every year they've made a huge profit, even during the COVID pandemic. And they also have a great marketing strategy, which I think will play an important role. Their consistent posts on social media, especially with so many people turning to social media currently, customers are aware of their products and services, which engages them into their store and helps create and maintain demand for their products. That concludes my presentation. Thank you for listening.
All right. All right, so thank you so much for that, Shane. Does anyone here have any questions for Shane or comments, concerns?
I have a question.
Yes.
So I've been a member for, I don't know, 20 plus years. So I kind of knew about, some of those things like the employees. I already, that employees are do very well there and enjoy their work and are always ranked, but highly. But I was curious about any sustainability. I know that, for years I've been going there, and before anybody else, they were reusing their materials. They give boxes that they've already got there that you can put your things in. They don't do a lot of plastic. Don't do any that I know of. Like, I don't think they give out plastic bags at all. Maybe they do for some small items. But I've always been impressed by that because they've done that for before it was even a thing. They've done that. So anyway, I was curious if you had any other information about any of their sustainability measures.
I did research about some of their sustainability measures in my research paper, but I'll have to look back into that paper to really see it, like the statistics behind how much they've done in their sustainability measures.
All right, we have one more question for you. So it's from Ainsley. I don't know if you can see it, but she's asking, how does cost of membership profit percentage compared to Sam's Club?
That's something that I think that's a good question. I think that's something I should have researched. I did research how their employees, their pay compares to Sam's Club. And they were about the same in how much their wage was.
All right, thank you. I have a personal question, which is like, what is the most crucial thing that you took away from this presentation or giving this presentation?
I think it opened my mind to how unique or new business models can succeed in the business. So I'm going to look more into how businesses use specific strategies or unique strategies in order to get them above their competition.
All right, thank you. Does anyone else have any questions or okay, there's one more from Eric. So he's asking, does Costco have any competition in its specific audience?
Does that mean like business wise, or
I
because
think so,
their
yeah.
competitors are Sam's Club, Walmart, Target. Those are their main competitors.
All righty. I don't see any other questions unless you have any.
No.
No? Okay.
I can go ahead and present.
I just wanted to comment that I really, I enjoyed or was glad to know about their human rights, the things that they're doing there. I thought that was great. It was nice to hear that. So that's just a comment.
All right. So if we don't have any other questions from anyone else, then we're going to go ahead and do our third presenter. So I'm just going to go ahead and share, and Myra will take over. Let's see. All right.
I'd like to formally, hi, my name is Mayra de la Torre. I'd like to formally introduce the next presenter. Her name is Ainsley Strang, and her research is on AI and its ability to copy human phenomenon. And let's see what the findings are. Go ahead.
Hello, my name is Ainsley Strang, and today I'm presenting on AI's ability to mimic human psychology. So what is AI? Put simply, AI uses computers to accomplish goals previously thought only possible by human intelligence. It interprets data, learns from said data, potentially adapts itself if needed, and then uses its learning to accomplish goals. In order to create AI, computer scientists modeled neurons in our brains. Neurons communicate with each other through electrical pulses to perform certain functions, something we'll explore deeper when we discuss exactly how AI works. There are two main groups of AI: applied AI, which are intelligent systems who can accomplish one task, and generalized AI, which are what we see in movies, where systems can handle any assignment exactly like the human brain. We've come very far in our advances in artificial intelligence, where currently we have been able to use our knowledge of computer science to simulate some aspects of human intelligence. However, the more complicated generalized AI has not fully been developed. Coined in 1956 by John McCarthy for his project titled the Dartmouth Summer Research Project on Artificial Intelligence, was the first mention of AI, where for 8 weeks, cognitive scientists, computer scientists, and mathematicians gathered to discuss the potential of computerized systems to mimic human activity. Additionally, during the same year, Alan Newhart, Herbert A. Simon, and Cliff Shaw created the logic theorists who used automated reasoning to solve mathematical theorems and improve upon proofs. This automated reasoning has since been applied to the learning of AI. After this initial fascination with artificial intelligence, there was a lot of misconceptions about its potential. Within 1970, some people believing that there would soon be machines with the same general intelligence of a human. However, AI requires a lot of computer processing and a lot of data, causing the AI winter due to the lack of having power and data to accomplish the goals of artificial intelligence. However, as time went on, scientists have been able to increase computer processing power, allowing artificial intelligence to have the capacity to mimic some of our brain processes. Additionally, with the internet and social media, they have also increased the numeric data points AI can process, allowing AI to learn off of our actions. AI, when first created, doesn't know how to do anything. Just like how a baby needs to touch something hot in order to know that they shouldn't touch something hot, it needs data points in order to gather information about the world around them in order to solve a problem. AI needs lots and lots of clear labeled data points in order to use a process known as machine learning that allows it to solve problems like the human. There are 3 types of machine learning. Reinforcement learning, where AI learns from its environment through feedback from its behavior. Unsupervised learning, where AI learns without training labels and finds hidden patterns in data. And then supervised learning, which is what's mostly used in AI, learning from training labels. In 1958, Frank Rosenfeld used the model of the darkness conference to create an artificial neuron. Known as the perceptron, the computer looked at images of shapes and determined if it was a triangle or not. The perceptron would get different electrical signals from the pixels of the camera. Then, similar to how our neurons synapses act, the computer received enough electrical signals to cross a certain threshold. The computer would say it was a triangle. As we talked about before, it took many data points for the perceptron to accurately determine if it was a triangle or not. Using Rosenblatt's input to determine if yes it was or no it wasn't, hence the supervised learning. If the machine got it correct, nothing would change. But if it got it wrong, the machine would change the amount of electricity each pixel output. The same concept is used in modern AI, where the computer mimics human neurons. The neuron has dendrites on the outside and axons connected to them on another neuron's dendrites. The little gap between the axon and the dendrite is known as a synapse, where the electrical signals are passed through. However, in order for the information to be released, the electricity needs to build up until an activation threshold is met, in which case the signal is sent. In the case of the neuron, it is the number of electrical signals rather than the strength, but they act the same way as computers do. In modern supervised learning, there are different weights that electrical values have that are all summed together. Then the computer performs its mathematical function to determine if the sum is greater than a set bias, something that is changed by the computer as it adapts. Once the computer goes to the mathematical function, it then gives us an output, extremely similar to how neurons function in our brain. Inside of machine learning, we have a subsection known as deep learning, which uses input, output, and different hidden layers in order to represent an artificial neural network. Like we discussed previously, there are a different number of weights attached to all the values, utilizing mathematics in order to solve mostly binary questions, similar to how our machine learning did. However, these artificial neural networks can accomplish even more complex problems. If any of you have Google Photos, you can see that the photos are able to practice recognizing different faces on your phone. The AI first converts the different pixels into numeric values based on their RGB codes. This is known as the input layer. Then the different hidden layers perform an analysis on the numeric input layers, based on which ones they have been programmed to use. These hidden layers can perform all different types of tasks and look at all different types of factors. For example, one layer could be used to differentiate between eye color. Then, using multiple hidden layers, the artificial neural network outputs who it thinks it is in the picture. We are then able to tell the computer that yes, who it thinks it is incorrect or correct, giving it another data point to work off of or help in adjusting its algorithm. These same principles can apply to vocal recognition, with the input data being changed into numeric values based on pitch, intonation, and other factors. Additionally, AI are able to simulate human thinking using fuzzy logic. Fuzzy logic cannot be determined as a Boolean value, as true or false. Rather, there are multiple solutions that are partly true and partly false. Computer scientists are able to use fuzzy control structures in order to have AI mimic human reasoning and mortality, where many of our options aren't simply yes or no. They use a rule base, which governs the decision-making process, and then provides rules for the computer. It then uses fuzzification to convert the numeric values into fuzzy sets. Then we use an inference engine that determines which rules apply to the fuzzy set. Finally, the problem is defuzzified into a single value. The use of fuzzy logic allows AI to make decisions outside the binary yes or no, similar to human cognition. AI, using its many different functions, is able to simulate human activity. For example, AI is able to predict the scent of different molecules using neural networks. Joe Mainland at the University of Pennsylvania used the potential of AI to create an odor map that associates scent and structure between molecules. Using this map, the AI is able to predict the scent of things that have never come in contact with. This in and of itself is an amazing feat because of the subjectiveness of human scent. It is not as simple as color, with the human eye having 3 main perceptions of color, red, green, and blue, because scent has over 300 receptors that determine how we experience it. In conclusion, AI is able to mimic human activity by learning from data, something that will allow it to continue advancing and improving our lives. Thank you. Hello, my name is Ansley Strang.
Alrighty, so let's go to question. Anyone here have any questions before we ask our own?
I'm just curious, what class was this presentation for? What honors class?
Oh, Ainsley, we can't hear. We can't hear. Yeah, there we go. No, we can't hear. Yeah. And stop sharing. Nope. She's muted. Yeah, you're still muted. I think you unmuted for a second, then you went back to being muted. No. We can hear it. Yeah, you're good.
Okay,
There we go.
Okay, so we actually don't have any honors computer science courses at Miracosta, but I really wanted to do a research presentation on this. So I worked alongside one of the computer science faculty just to do a presentation on it because we had been kind of talking about like machine learning in our class. So yeah.
Good job.
Alrighty. I think Maya has one question for you.
Hi, has your research inspired like expanding on a specific area after you did this research? I don't know if that makes sense, but
Like, are you saying, has it inspired me to like
dig deeper?
Oh yeah, okay. Researching it was really interesting, especially the like the fuzzy logic portion of it. Because like normally with computer science, you can only like it only outputs like binary data. So like you can either say like, oh yes, this is true, or no, this is false. But with like fuzzy logic, you can like have it output multiple sets of data based on different weights that it has. I don't know how, like I explained the concept of weights in my presentation, but so that part was really interesting to me, and it's like potential applications of like, I don't know if you've seen videos of like AI robots like solving moral problems, like the trolley problem, but I think it's really interesting the idea that they would have like similar abilities of human intelligence to solve more like morality issues.
It's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Alrighty. Does anyone else have any questions, comments at all?
Good job.
No. All right, that was a great presentation. Thank you for presenting. And okay, so if we don't have any other question, we're gonna take a 15-minute break and we're gonna come back at 10:45. So yeah. All right.
Welcome back, everyone. I will be presenting the next group presentation. Catrice Mendoza and Ainsley Strang will be sharing their research on the golden ratio and its applications to real world phenomenon and exploration of music and natural phenomena in the golden ratio and Fibonacci sequence and correspondence to our interest in biology and cognitive science. I'm excited for it. Okay, let's go.
Hello, my name is Ainsley Strang.
And I'm Catrice Mendoza, and today we're presenting Fibonacci sequence and golden ratio.
The golden ratio is a concept that has been around since the ancient Greeks. Its involvement can be traced back to Plato's description of the Platonic solids, which are shapes that define our world. Plato believes that the last of the Platonic solids was the dodecahedron, an assemblage of 12 pentagons intended to represent the shape of the universe. These pentagons follow the divine ratio and is believed to be the inspiration for Lucid's extreme and mean ratio, the first explicit definition of the golden ratio. This number, now known as phi, holds many special properties, including being the only number whose square is exactly 1 greater than itself and whose reciprocal is exactly 1 less. To calculate phi, if we were to divide a line segment into 2 parts, the ratio of the length of the longer part, part A, and the shorter part, part B, needs to equal the ratio of the sum of A and B to A, as shown in the figure. Using this information, we can calculate the golden rectangle. First, as shown in step 1, we draw a line from point B to the center of line segment CD. Then, using the angle created by this triangle, we would draw an arc using the same angle starting from point B, as shown in steps 2 and 3. Then, if we continue this arc, we'll eventually create a spiraling structure. This spiral has been found to actually represent the Fibonacci sequence. The Fibonacci sequence is an infinite series of numbers who is defined as f of n plus f of the next term. Ultimately, we'd end up with the values 0, 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21, 34, and so on. The sequence's ratio between the previous 2 terms is constantly approaching 5, as shown in the chart. This defined portion actually has many functions outside of mathematics and can be applied to the world of biopsychology. In a study titled Psi in Psychology, Physiology, and Biomechanics, the golden ratio between myth and science, the authors studied the proportions between a subject's stride compared to their stance. Ultimately, the authors concluded that in a healthy subject, the ratio between the stance and swing serrations is equal to the ratio between the stride and stance serrations, and both equal 5. In addition to this, they found that in patients that were psychologically unwell, such as those who suffered from Parkinson's disease, that these ratios were not found, highlighting the importance of our brain in the perception of these ratios and in our health.
Of course, there are many people who discredit this theory of application of the golden ratio, calling it a myth. However, it is undeniable that there are at least some correlations that divine proportions in the Fibonacci sequence have in our world. For example, the shape created by the Fibonacci sequence is reminiscent of a chambered nautilus shell. They are known to have complex body plans, as the chambers are created in response to their weight to maintain neutral buoyancy. While it is true that sometimes living things may not perfectly correlate to the golden ratio, it is nearly perfect, an adaptation that is undoubtedly related to the significance of the Fibonacci sequence in our world. Leonardo Pisano, also known as Fibonacci, was the first to detail the standard of growth for a population of rabbits utilizing the Fibonacci sequence. This is an idealized population with the following conditions. First, a single pair of newborn male and female rabbits are put in a field. Second, Rabbits can mate once they are 1 month old, and 3, rabbits never die, and mating always produces a new pair. By knowing the perfect model for the repopulation of different species, scientists are able to determine the pitfalls of their individual adaptations and environments, giving us deeper insight into the ecosystems around us. The Fibonacci sequence is also applicable to plants such as sunflowers. Specifically, the seeds or florets of the sunflowers growing in circular arcs are representative of the golden rectangle proven by divine proportions. In relation to biology, this occurs naturally because of the presence of auxin, specifically indole-3 acidic acid. The plant hormone affects the plant's development and the formation of disc florets. The golden ratio is found when the angle created by the floret reaches the golden angle of roughly 137.5 degrees, and the flower head gets packed most densely and evenly. Thus, the divine proportion is reached when the sunflower obtains substantial growth. As auxin is more present in areas with less light, this can affect the auxiliary buds due to their root to shoot biomass, affecting the overall yield of a flowering plant. This can be represented by stabilizing selection if sunflowers with disc florets that correspond to the golden angle have an intermediate phenotype characterized by 5, the golden ratio, and have the highest fitness as shown on the very right. This shape is also thought to have guided many architectural and artistic feats, such as Leonardo da Vinci's Mona Lisa and the Sacrament of the Last Supper, the Parthenon in Athens, as well as in renowned paintings and buildings throughout the world.
Professor of Mechanical Engineering at Duke University, Adrian Brennan, predicts that the reason our brain tends to appreciate art pieces such as these is because of their use of the golden ratio. He explains that it is well known that the eyes take in information more efficiently when they scan side to side, as opposed to up and down, making the divine ratio the best proportion in order to transfer information to the brain. In fact, viewing these golden ratios sets off the reward center of our brain, releasing dopamine and making us more likely to view the paintings that follows the golden ratio in a positive light. While some scholars may argue that the use of the golden rectangle in these works and many others is simply by coincidence, it may have something to do with how our brains relay information. As explained before, receiving the golden ratio activates our brain's dopamine systems, making us want to view the ratio again and again. This is similar to how we've been conditioned to reach for our phones, as doing so releases dopamine in our brains. This in turn can make artists and architects more susceptible to create using the ratio, even if unintended. When they do so, they are rewarded by the brain. Here are our works cited, mostly consisting of research papers and commentaries on the Fibonacci sequence. Thank you so much for listening to our presentation.
Hello, my name is Eric Choi, and this is my Omni presentation for History 100. My presentation will be focused on food, class, and daily life in ancient China.
Hi, does anyone have any questions? There's one from Catrice. Oh, wait. Oh, no.
All right, no problem. You can type it out. Thank you.
Okay.
We have Dolores after.
Oh, please go ahead, Dolores.
Well, yeah, while you type it.
Yeah, I was just curious, what was your most interesting part of this research for you, just as a student? What was the most interesting thing that you found?
Were you able to hear that? Right, okay,
they're-
all right, all right, I think, okay, got it. You sleep too, right? All right. Did Ansley step out? Yeah. Yeah, I think she just stepped out. It's okay, wait, yeah. No, we can't hear you. No, we thought you had, nope. No, we still can't hear you. I'm not sure. Try muting and muting like earlier, it might work. And then come back in, try again. Nope. I know, I'm not sure what is happening today.
Hello.
Yeah, there you go, we can hear you.
Perfect. Okay, so Katris says hers in the chat. So I thought it was really interesting. As I talked about earlier in the presentation, the correlation between like stride length and stride time equaling like exactly the Fibonacci sequence, and that number actually not equaling the Fibonacci sequence in patients with like dementia. Like it kind of shows like, you know, the fact that it actually the fact that it actually like does make a difference and does like come up in our world, and those who like don't, or those who are mentally unwell don't exhibit it. I thought that was really interesting.
Thank you. And Catrice, I'll share her comment. The most interesting thing I found was that the Fibonacci's rabbits corresponds to Fibonacci sequence and how it corresponds to her Bio 202 class with the stabilizing selection of the sunflowers. With phi, the golden ratio, or phi, or phi.
I think I.
Sorry.
All right, perfect. Does that answer your question, Dolores? Good, okay, good. And then does anyone else have any questions?
Can you explain a little bit more in detail about the Fibonacci rabbits? It's very interesting.
Yeah, so for the Fibonacci rabbits, so basically what the you know what the Fibonacci sequence is. It's basically taking the population of one, adding it to the population of the next. Like that's basically what the infinite series is. So by kind of using a variation of it, scientists were able to like create scientists were able to create a function that basically mimicked the ideal situation for rabbits to be repopulated in. So I'm not sure the exact numbers on it, but it was a variation of the Fibonacci sequence, and yeah.
Thank you.
No problem.
All righty, thank you. Does anyone else have any questions before we move on? No? All right, we can go on to our second speaker right now. Let's go. All right, so our speaker right now is going to be Eric Choi, and he's going to talk about food, class, and daily life in ancient China. And he's also going to give an explanation about the relationship between diet, wealth, and also lifestyle in China from the Han to the Song dynasties.
Hello, my name is Eric Choi, and this is my Omni presentation for History 100. My presentation will be focused on food, class, and daily life in ancient China. Ancient China has a rich history that dates back to 1250 BC. The higher class and the lower/middle class has a very large gap in practicality in ancient China, which is shown in documents and research. What is interesting is that the gap can be correlated to what the person actually eats. A lot of research has been done to show what the ancient Chinese people ate, but there is no research further that links diet to class. Instead of stopping at the diets, thinking further into their daily lives makes it extremely obvious that food is connected to almost everything that they did. What they ate directly correlates to the economic status and social role that the individual partook in. Ancient civilizations like the Han Dynasty in China prove that there is significance in what their people ate, which correlates to their daily life. First, I would like to go and talk about my research question for my presentation, and then I would like to move on to my primary analysis. And then I would like to move on to my main points of the presentation and move on to number 4, which is to answer my research question that I presented. And then I'll finally like to conclude and talk about my works inside it. So for my research question, it is, what is the significance of food and diet in an ancient Chinese individual's daily life? And I would like to answer that further after I give context towards my presentation. So starting with my main points, I want to talk about what the people actually ate. It is important to first understand what the different social and economic classes were actually consuming in their daily lives. Peasants made up the majority of the population in China during the Han Dynasty. According to Glenn Kucha, a historian that specializes in ancient Asian societies, she said that more than 80% of Chinese were peasants. A minority of peasants claimed ownership of some land. However, most paid rent to landlords. The majority of the peasants were in constant debt because they took in so many loans from landowners and nobles. The minority of these peasants were well off because of their farming job and actually had positive net growth. These peasants could afford oxen to carry the load for them and created marketplaces using their accumulated wealth. It is widely believed that peasants were primarily the least important class in the eyes of the royals and the wealthy families. The peasants primarily ate an extremely bland diet. In the northern parts of China, their diet consisted of dumplings, pancakes, and noodles. In the south, the staple food was rice. For both regions, if a peasant lived near a river, they would primarily catch, sell, and eat fish. Dumplings back in ancient China consisted of a cooked dough with small pieces of leftover meat from a last meal or rice stuffed inside of the dough. Peasants ate wheat and a grain called millet as well. Unlike the common wealthy family, peasants also grew some of their own crops. Many families decided to grow ginger, onion, and garlic to save money. They could also sell the crops to gain more money to survive. The problem was that their farm and land was not even theirs, but the elite or the king. The peasants were also taxed extremely heavily by the government. John Super says, often when it came to time to repay the debt, the peasants had already sold his tools and animals. Some even sold their children into slavery and could not repay the loan. Then, the landowner would take the peasant's land, having him work on it for practically nothing. Being a peasant was extremely harsh and was not a great way of living out a precious life. The elite had a very different diet than the peasantry in ancient China. The wealthy ate the same grains as the peasants, such as rice and millet. They just ate everything in exponentially large portions. They ate a large plethora of meats, such as pork, duck, chicken, goose, and dog. They also ate a lot of greens that included yams, beans, turnips, onions, and garlic. Along with vegetables, the elite had the blessing of being able to indulge in fruits, such as oranges, lemons, peaches, and apricots. Another thing to mention is that the wealthy also ate a large amount of fish. Among the fish they ate, a prized delicacy that is still eaten today is a shark. Various soups were made that sustain the shark's fin inside of it, as well as bird's nests, bear paws, and sea slugs. Another thing that is extremely exclusive to the elite was wine and alcohol. They would ferment rice and millet to create drinks that were still produced to this day in China and other countries as well. Tea was also an extremely important part of the Chinese diet. In the beginning of tea's origin, it was extremely exclusive to the elites and the top of the social spectrum pyramid. But as it became cost-effective and the peasants started to drink it as well. Tea was grown in China from as early as 3000 BC, and they started to brew it as a traditional beverage. Dinners and banquets were extremely common for the Chinese. As shown in paintings, scrolls, and pottery, the elite would document their eating habits to brag about how wealthy and stoic they are. Art, where there are huge tables that elite and royal men sat around, with at least 20 plates filled with meat and fruit is extremely common. As you can see in this painting right here, we see a plethora of men with a bunch of plates in a huge table. So we can see that example straight from this primary source. This information all distills back to what the main thesis of how one's diet can connect to their daily lives. It may be hard to see the implication of what food really means to the ancient Chinese civilization, but there truly is a large gap between the social classes that directly correlates back to food. Many peasants had extremely grueling and difficult lives. They worked nearly every single day of the entire year to supplement themselves and their family. This meant that they had absolutely no break and were physically, emotionally, and mentally drained. They were physically drained from their workload and had a hard time even thinking properly after a long day of farming and towing carts full of vegetables. The peasants also were heavily induced into harsh weathers that included the frighteningly scorching sun, extremely dampening storms and rain, heavy dust storms, and the extremely cold. It was a living misery for them every single year. Even a single one of these natural disasters could ruin a peasant's entire life. Their field could be destroyed, their oxen could be killed, or their tiny house could have collapsed. The peasants had nothing to truly live for, since they are only working for the owners of the land and their families. Even when they are starving and eating a couple grains every day, they could not stop working because that was their entire daily life. Their shirts and pants were made of scratchy cloth, and their sandals were made of straw that gave their feet infections. When it came to providing for one's family, many people do not take into account how difficult that was. 3 generations of a family, the grandparents, parents, and children, usually all lived in the same tiny household. This made it extremely difficult for the father and leader of the household to live with any benefits or blessings. China was a male-dominating society at the time, so the male had a huge power spike and led over the females in the household complex. The roofs of the houses were thatched, and furniture was relegated to small wooden benches that can barely fit a child's body, let alone an adult's. An average elite's daily life was luxurious and much more abundant than a peasant's. Instead of the peasants who sparingly ate extremely low amounts of food, the elite piled up a huge table with an unthinkable amount of plates. They lived in a tremendously large wooden house that served as another possession for them to brag about. Roofs were made of customized tiles that were handmade and hand-carved. These tiles were more expensive and luxurious because they were built in a curved shape, which is much harder to produce in an ancient Chinese setting, where there were no machines. Even in a luxurious house, there was a limitation of furniture, just like the peasants. The difference is that there was no furniture by choice for the elite. They loved their gardens and would take regular walks in it to relish their beautiful house and plants. During the Song Dynasty, there was a change in the social classes. Scholars and students were valued as very important in China, which lifted them in status. These Song Dynasty scholars are more educated and less aristocratic than any of the previous individuals during the Tang and Han Dynasty. The students that went to school were all rich, which means that they all ate extremely well to stay healthy. Women were the ones in the average Chinese household that had to cook for their husbands and children. In many cases, they also had to prepare meals for their own parents and husbands' parents as well. This was an extremely difficult feat for the majority of peasants, which is why they stayed in poverty and were malnourished. Now that there is a complete background on both the peasants and the elite, it is also imperative to connect these two classes and realize what is proportional. It turns out that the significance behind the food that each social and economic class eat is profound. Peasants and generic merchants were extremely skinny, and that made their bodies unproductive. Their bodies were extremely weak and fragile, but their workloads do not reflect that. Hundreds of peasants would die every year because they were forced to work every second of the day to provide food for their family and wealth to the landowners. Even when they worked their entire lives away, they could only get a small spoonful of rice and a tiny dumpling filled with scraps for themselves and their families. The lives of a common peasant was a vicious cycle that they could not escape. The elite on the opposite spectrum grew fat because of the amount of food they consumed. Since they loved bringing guests over to their house to brag about how much they possessed, they started to stack huge tables with food to impress them. Copious amounts of pottery, art, and portraits during the Han Dynasty showed paintings of royal men that were plump and overweight. Many of these elites were clinically ill and died early due to diabetes. There's an indirect correlation that can connect their death to their eating habits. Confucius was quite clear that the purpose of eating was to satisfy hunger, rather than gastronomic indulgence. He himself ate sparingly and carefully balanced his diet between grains and such flavorings as meat or vegetables. He was also fastidious around the freshness of the food he ate and about cleanliness, setting high standards of hygiene for his followers. Although many of them fell sick to their gluttony that was looked down upon, they had happy and easy lives thanks to their money. Food truly did change how all of the Chinese population lived their daily lives. Following the patterns of the diet only provides further insight on who they are as individuals and why they matter to their environment. Now, as we look at these paintings and primary sources, we can see that all of what I just explained is demonstrated in these paintings. So the first painting is called An Elegant Party, and it was created in the Tang Dynasty. And as you can see, there are many men sitting around a huge table with plenty of plates. And it just shows how comfortably and gluttonizing the men were. In the second picture, we see a couple peasants that are working in the farms during the Han Dynasty. And in the third painting, we see yet another example of how the elite use their richness and their wealthiness to create elaborate banquets and feasts to show their guests around. Now to answer the research question, what is the significance of food and diet in an ancient Chinese individual's daily life? Hundreds of peasants would die every year because they were forced to work every single day of the day to provide food for the family and wealth to the landowners. Many of these royals became clinically ill and died early due to diabetes. There is an indirect correlation that can connect to their deaths to their eating habits. There is significance in between what food and diet bring into an ancient Chinese person's individual life, whether they are a peasant or a royal/elite. Now to conclude, the social development of the ancient Chinese in the context of different economic classes and what they ate is reflected upon through the course of their daily lives. Primary sources like paintings and pottery provided a small picture of what their lives were like, but there is nothing that can be taken after that point. The history of China is extremely diverse and plentiful, which is why this presentation exists to teach an aspect of it. Their eating habits instantaneously corresponds to elements of Chinese history, and foods like rice and tea are intertwined with what we know as ancient Chinese culture. Knowing the correlating relationship between what a person eats and how they perform in society is crucial to the understanding of their lives. Thank you for watching the presentation. Now, are there any questions?
I'm just gonna make sure. Okay, perfect. All right, thank you so much for that presentation. It was very informative. We really enjoyed it. But before I ask my own question, does anyone from the audience have a question for Eric?
Yes, that was well done, Eric. I enjoyed your presentation a lot, and I really liked your use of the slides. I like the backgrounds. They're really very good. And your extensive use of primary sources was great too. I was kind of curious that I was wondering if you could differentiate at all on the daily lives between peasantry in northern China or in southern China. Did you find significant differences between them due to climate and availability of food?
Well, when I was researching my topic, I wanted to research further into the different regions of ancient China and then see if the peasantry in these different regions like differ in like their lifestyle and how they like function as a society. But I couldn't find a lot of research in conjunction to that like specific range where it talks about the peasantry, and then I could connect it back to food, class, and daily life in like the different regions. I couldn't find like yeah, doing my research.
And could you explain a little bit more about who the elites are?
The elites would just be, it's a very generic and wide range of people in ancient China. It could include the royalty, like the emperors and their family. It could include higher class merchants, because most merchants were part of the peasantry, but some of them in my research were part of the elite because they just had a plentiful amount of economy in China. And then some of them were just nobles that were in the council in Chinese in like what they thought was the Chinese government. So yeah, that was like the portion of the elite.
Thanks.
All right. So my question, I think it just might have been answered, but I was wondering why you chose to do research on this topic. But if you want to like elaborate more on it, you can.
Right. So for our history 100 honors class, we were every Friday we would talk about food, or most Fridays, right? And then our entire topic was supposed to be on food. So I wanted to elaborate more on China because I thought ancient China was extremely interesting while researching about the region in my class. So I thought if I research further on how a person's diet could relate to their daily life, and just from what food they ate, you can see what they actually did in real life. I thought that was like extremely interesting and just shows like how much it matters in their life. Yeah.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Does anyone else have a question or comment?
I think I see a question in the chat room. It
Okay,
says,
let me
yeah,
see.
it says, how did diet affect the lifespan of the poorer classes? So I think I pointed out earlier in my presentation, but I explained that because peasants had to deal with so many natural disasters like storms, rains, and they just lived in very harsh life conditions. I couldn't specifically find like a statistic that said, oh, peasants die at this age range, but I think it's easy to assume that many of them died because of these natural disasters and much earlier than an elite would because of their life conditions.
All right, thank you. Any other question? All right, then we'll go on to our last presentation, and Myra will lead that one. So let me share. Actually, I'll share first. Go back. And here we go.
Hi everyone, I'm Amanda. I'm Anahita. And I'm Jessa. This is our Math 150. Hi everyone, I'm Amanda. I'm on.
All right, do you want to do a little quick introduction?
Yeah, hi. The next group presentation is sorry, includes Amanda Parker, Anaita Zarai, and Jess Selland, and they're doing their research on the horse who knows calculus, and looking forward to it.
All righty, there we go.
Anahita. And I'm Jessa. This is our Math 150 Calc 1 honors project for fall of 2022.
Last semester, a group of honors students illustrated how Snell's law and the principles of least time apply to the movement of dogs between the river and the shore. Our group wanted to test this theory as well to see if it would prove to be true for a multitude of mammals. We decided to experiment this idea on horses in an equestrian field. In order to expand on their work, we analyzed the movement of one pony, a small horse, while training in a round pit. So our question today is, do horses instinctually apply Snell's law to find the shortest distance when different mediums are present. For thousands of years, people have been fascinated by how light takes the shortest pathways from one medium to another. From ancient Huron's shortest distance problem to Snell's law and the principle of least time, we have proven empirically and theoretically that light takes the shortest time to travel from one medium to another. Last semester, a group of Maricosta honor students illustrated the same principles and theory to the movement of dogs between the river and shore. We are expanding on their work. We gained access to an equestrian facility in Rancho Santa Fe, California, and we conducted research in an arena that had two different soil textures. One was more dense and one was tufted. We used these two different mediums to see if the pony would go at different angles and speeds on the different mediums following Snell's law. Our pony was named Coco the Pony, and we would like to give a special thank you to Rachel, the horse trainer that allowed us access to this horse. We used carrots as the main source of motivation to get the horse from one point to another, and we used 3 iPhones to record all points of action moving from point A to point B. We also used a 100-yard tape measure to measure the pin and the area of the field itself.
The first step that we took to analyze the data was to create a map that displayed all of the data that we collected in our measurements from the experiment. We created this map on AutoCAD and we divided it up into 2 different main regions, marking the different types of mediums, the different soil. We then from there could mark all the pathways that the pony took. So we had 10 different pathways that we marked on the map. And from there, we could use the videos and match the timestamps in the videos of when Coco changed pathways with the pathways that we drew on AutoCAD. That allowed us to get the time and the distance for the pathways, so then we could find the velocity. We then found the average velocity of the pathways from all 10 clips. Right here displays the AutoCAD map that we came up with. And then right here you can see the 10 different pathways that we marked out that Coco took. Okay, so then here's all the data. So right here is a chart that includes all of the data that we collected. It shows the time, the distance, and the velocity for all of the pathways for the 10 different clips. Right here illustrates the average velocities that we got for the different paths. So you can see that path 1 has a lower velocity than path 2 and 3. And we even saw that there was a p-value of less than 0.05, meaning that there's a significant difference between path 1 and the other 2 paths. As you can see in these 2 videos, as Amanda just stated, there is a significant difference in velocities amongst the different pathways that Coco went. First video, she took a little bit of time and went over to Anna. But as you can see in these 2 videos that Coco did cut at an angle as the mediums changed. So from our research, we did conclude that horses do instinctually follow Snell's law. We see that horses
are consistent to the theory, as it took 3 different velocities and pathways on the different mediums. However, the horse is not itself performing calculus notations in their head in order to apply this theory. Instead, they are using the subconscious mind to rely on intuition to find the easiest and shortest path. Our experiment did come with some limitations. The soil mediums were not drastically different. They were both soil, but they had their own densities. Our data is using a pony that was domesticated and trained to be ridden as opposed to a wild horse. And the horse was used to the trainer standing in the middle of the arena, which could have affected the pathways taken by Coco, since the pony is used to not being allowed to go through the center, so she could have instinctually been avoiding the center of the arena. And we had to estimate the pathway angles taken by Coco, and as a result, we did have to estimate the distances per pathway. And it was possible that the pony was more motivated as it approached the food compared to being further away from it. If we were to do this experiment again, we would do a few things differently. For example, we would use multiple horses, preferably of different sizes, just to get a comparison. And we would like to use a wild horse or a less trained horse compared to a domesticated one. And we would use a dirt compactor on half of the round pin and a cultivator on the other, as to create greater differences in mediums. We would also like to use a drone video recorder to capture the angle changes more accurately. And we could use harsher difference in mediums such as grass, concrete, gravel, etc. And once again, we would like to thank Rachel and Coco the pony for their time and cooperation. And thank you to the audience for listening.
That was cute. Yeah, that's funny. It's still funny. It's still funny.
When the stakes are high at work, your tone matters.
I apologize. Give me 1
Grammarly's
second.
advanced tone suggestions
going.
can help.
All right, here we
Because
go.
when
Oh. All right, you go.
Thank you for that. Does anybody have any questions? Let me check.
Yeah. Actually, I have one before. So my question to you is like, how did your who helped you during the process of like doing your project, or if you came across any complications doing so?
Our professor was a huge help in the process, especially since he helped the previous group from the previous spring semester for their version of the project with dogs. So he was a little bit familiar with kind of how the process would go. So he helped us a lot with any issues or trouble that we came across. And then I forget what your second part of the question was.
Yeah, that was pretty much kind of answers it though. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But I do have a follow-up. Like, what kind of like motivated you to do the project based on the horse idea?
We were just interested in what the previous group did from the previous semester. We thought their project was really interesting, so we wanted to try it with other animals, and we even at one point considered doing it with babies because they also follow Snell's law and that kind of pattern of trying to take the shortest path. So we were just curious to see how it would apply with another animal.
All right, thank you so much for that.
I have something to add to that as well. The group originally wanted to do the babies like Amanda just stated. However, there were some limitations with doing that, getting like parents' consent and just working with humans, especially babies in general. And I grew up with horses and I had kind of noticed that they would cut at angles, and upon listening to my teacher talk about Snell's law and how the dogs followed the theory, I just kind of out of curiosity asked him like, oh, would it work with other mammals too, such as a horse? And he was like, I don't know, let's try. And so we kind of left the baby idea in the dust and went with the horses instead.
Nice. That's actually really cool. I mean, it showed, it was very interesting. I was actually very motivated, like to keep watching. And I was like, is there more to it? But that was really informational. So thank you so much for sharing. Any other concerns or comments from the audience? No? All right. So that's actually the end of our presentation for the Almany for today. So if no one else have any questions or concerns, we'll just be ending it here. But yeah, thank you so much to our presenters today. We really enjoyed watching your presentations, and I hope you guys have a good. Make sure we'll be sending out an email regarding if anyone had a question later on with the form. So make sure you check your email. But yeah, so thank you so much again for your presentations.
I just want to say thank you also. It was very interesting. Everybody did a great job. Thank you.
All right. That's good. All right. Let me